Okay, since we have a quorum, I am 2 minutes out, but we can get the meeting started.
You can't,
May I have a,
Councilmember Reed, you can't chair from remote. So if you want someone else to,
there's no rule that says that, but just in efficiency of time, we can just get started. May I have a check on quorum, or may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Reed?
Here.
Councilmember Kelly? Councilmember Harris? Councilmember Newsma?
Here.
Councilmember Burns?
Here.
With 4, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. May I have a motion for the minutes?
And just a point of order, I have a question for legal. I want to make sure, I know what we do have new rules now that the declaration has ended. And so, just so whatever we do is valid, I just want to make sure that it is okay if we have a chair that is en route but not present. Because I'm happy to chair until he gets here, but it sounds like it might not be an issue. I just want to make sure.
I'm checking with Nick. I actually just texted him about it. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion on the minutes of July 10th.
Is there a second?
second.
Seconded by Councilmember Harris.
Wonderful. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? The ayes have it. That brings us to public comment.
We have no one in
Do we have
person
anyone?
and Mike Vasilko online.
Mike Vasilko, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Item A2, I don't understand what the deliverables are for this $1.572 million recommendation regarding PFAS treatment technique study services. I'm a big fan of getting into the PFAS issue. This is something that the MWRD covered up for a decade. Finally, there's been a lot of activity regarding it, but I don't know what we're getting for this amount of money, and I don't know why Evanston is paying for it. This is something MWRD should be paying for. I understood there was some millions and millions of dollars of settlements from manufacturers. Where's that money, and why isn't that money paying for this? And then lastly, on this issue, the memo says a not to exceed amount of $1,572,000 versus what was the bid amount of $969,130 plus $600,000 in other services. So they're awarded based on a low bid, but they're not really the low bidder if they add in that 600,000. So a lot of confusion on this. I think there needs to be more explanation on that issue. Items A9 and A11. Why we keep doing this, Jonathan? Is Jonathan in the room? I don't even know if he's on the council this meeting, but why are we buying gas-fired utility trucks? Why are we buying a gas-fired ambulance? There are electric vehicles out there in all these categories, and the city shouldn't be continuing. We have climate change deniers either in this council or in the staff, and they take every opportunity to circumvent going all electric on the fleet. I don't understand it, why you keep putting up with it.
Mr. Vasilko, your time has elapsed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reed.
Thank you. If there's no one else for public comment, then we are ready to continue with our agenda. That brings us to the consent calendar. Are there any items that folks would like to pull off?
I'm going to pull A2, A8 through A11. and A12.
Anything else that folks would like to pull off the agenda?
Can you repeat that? Which items?
A2, A8, 9, 10, and 11, and A12.
Okay. With that, if there's nothing further pulled off the agenda, may I have a motion for the consent agenda minus items A2, A8, A9, A10, A11, and A12?
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Harris. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? The ayes have it. That brings us first to item A2. May I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move item A2, approval of a contract award with CDM Smith Incorporated for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25 for PFAS treatment technique study services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask Mr. King from our Water Treatment Department to address some of the questions that we had previously communicated about and were also brought up in public comment. Beginning with the cost for this and who is going to be bearing the cost.
Good evening, Chair Reed, members of the committee, Darrell King, Water Production Bureau Chief. And so in terms of the cost, potentially, there's been a settlement from two of the major manufacturers responsible for PFAS, 3M and DuPont. The city is a participant in, I guess it's a class action, that may be the wrong term. And so if those settlements are approved by the courts, there is a potential for reimbursement for, costs associated for the municipalities or utilities that are included in that, for costs associated with, treatment, construction, studies, those sorts of things. How much one utility will get, there's some calculation that they'll go through to figure out, the impact of PFAS contamination on that supply. And so there is potential for reimbursement of this study.
And the cost of this study will it be borne entirely by Evanston ratepayers or shared by our municipal customers?
It would be a shared expense.
So only a portion is being paid by City of Evanston.
Correct. Evanston accounts for 14% of the water treated and distributed through the water treatment plant, so it would bear that percentage of it.
So we're only paying 14% of this.
Correct.
Okay. And you had indicated earlier that one of the reasons you're recommending CDM Smith over the low bidder is that CDM Smith is including several additional treatment techniques in their evaluation. If you could elaborate a little bit.
So the original request for proposal that went out included was the evaluation of 5 treatment techniques: powdered activated carbon, granular activated carbon, ion exchange, nanofiltration, and reverse osmosis. And so CDM Smith's proposal is covering all 5 of those treatment techniques in their base scope. They also had an additional optional task that the team thought would enhance the study, but within their base scope, there were 8 tasks, and evaluating all 5 treatment techniques were included in that.
Right. And given that our municipal water supply is just one of dozens, scores, hundreds maybe coming out of Lake Michigan, and this condition really applies to anyone who's taking their water out of Lake Michigan. Are we paying CDM Smith to do the same study for us that they're going to be doing for other jurisdictions as well? Like, is this a real good money-making opportunity if you were CDM Smith?
I think it's, any consultant qualified to do this type of work, has an opportunity to make money, make a profit off of this study or any other study that happens. The more regulations are changing, some utilities may be forced regulatory-wise into implementing treatment, which is going to trigger studies to evaluate, the appropriate or the feasible options and the construction costs and all of those things. So, this study is specific to Evanston, to our source water and our water quality, and
our water treatment plant.
Our water treatment plant,
Okay.
Specifically. It'll even include, once the evaluation is done and they say, hey, out of the 5, these 2 or 3 options are feasible, conceptual designs will be put in place, schematics will be put in place, life cycle costs, probable construction costs. We'll have all of that information. If regulatory-wise we're forced to implement treatment, or if the city council desires that we implement treatment, we'll know what the costs are and what's feasible as part of our treatment technique at our water plant.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll take a vote on the issue. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Item A2 passes. That brings us on to item A8. May I have a motion on item A8?
If it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, I'll move items A8, A9, A10, and 11 together, since my questions are all somewhat interrelated.
With no objection, is there a second? Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Burns. Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask Mr. Cholik to address some of the concerns which we corresponded about in writing earlier today. I just kind of want to get this conversation on the record and in public. So starting with fuel purchase, Mr. Cholik, you indicated, or I had asked for fuel usage over the last few years, and you were able at fairly short notice to provide fuel purchases going back to 2020. With a little bit more time, you can dig into the numbers and get fuel usage going back even a few more years and on a monthly basis, if that's feasible?
Yes, that's correct. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Sean Cholik, Division Manager of Facilities and Fleet Management. Yes, we were able to pull together the numbers of gallons that we procure each of these last 3 years. With some additional time, we can have staff take a look and try to break down how much we've actually expended from the pumps to the different vehicles on a monthly basis.
Yeah,
give you a general idea of how much each month we dispense.
Because looking at the procurement numbers, there didn't seem to be a fairly consistent trend, so maybe you were buying something
Correct.
in December that we didn't use until February or something like that.
Right.
So-
Sometimes we see that the levels are getting kind of low towards the end of the year, and maybe at the very last part of the year, we order another truckload. So, it's hard to really judge based upon what we purchase each year exactly.
All right, but we do track how much we use on a.
Yeah, each vehicle has a card that shows, when they go and they fill up, it shows how much is being dispensed to that vehicle.
Okay.
So we can run a report for the whole month and show exactly how much
Great.
we've dispensed.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful to have, and I would imagine that our fleet electrification study is looking at that exact same kind of information as well. So-
Yes, we've provided them with the vendor with a number of items that they've asked for in regards to fuel usage.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to point out is that, depending on the season, you'll see in the wintertime, I'm sure that the, amount of fuel we're using is going up as Edgar's Public Works team is out on the street, 24 hours in a lot of cases fighting snow. So you'll see a fluctuation from month to month.
Right. I mentioned the EV fleet study, which is well overdue now. I probably am not the only one who's getting a little bit antsy with that one. So what can we expect? And can we expect any concessions out of the supplier since they are 5 months overdue?
Right. So staff has been having a series of conversations with them. We met again with them today. I also expressed my concern about the amount of time it's taking. The one thing that I will point out is that, you know, we want to make sure we're getting a quality report from them, and they seem to be doing pretty well with the electrification content. Staff feels like they're falling a little bit short with the right sizing component, so we want to make sure that we get them to really zero in on that and get that right so that we have something more substantial that we can work with in terms of future planning. So we are hoping that they will get the report back to us in mid-August, and then I'm thinking that we'll be able to release it, the final version, in September.
Great. I hope it's no later than that, and I hope it's fairly close to perfect since we've waited so long for it.
I hope so too, and if not, we might have another discussion with them. So. All
right. Now, to the issue of the vehicles that you're requesting to purchase, two F-550 trucks and an ambulance. Are electric vehicles an option for those type of for that type of purchase at this point?
So they are starting to make, I've seen one electric ambulance that seems to be like a prototype that has been used. We also want to make sure it's the right fit for our team, right? If the body portion of it doesn't work for the fire department, you know, then it's not going to meet, you know, our operational needs. So there's a couple different things. We've got availability that we have to worry about, and we also don't want to be, you know, we want to make sure we're getting electric vehicles, but we also don't want to buy something that hasn't been tried and tested. So we don't want to be spending, you know, $270,000 on an ambulance and find that it doesn't suit our needs. So we are going to continue to look into these options. This particular ambulance happens to be available right now, which is key to us in our operations and key to the fire department. They need to get an additional unit so that they can staff it and get it out on the streets. And so the beauty of that one is that it's available now. So with the ambulances, you know, we're a little cautious about what we buy, and there's not a whole lot of options out there, but we'll continue to look at them. And then for the F-550s, it's a similar thing. We haven't seen anything come out yet that is reputable enough and that we feel is going to work for public works operations. So we are proceeding cautiously with that. You know, availability is the key, but also operational needs and making sure that it's reliable, and also making sure that we have the charging infrastructure in place to power these. What we don't want to do is put the cart before the horse and then, you know, buy the equipment but not have the infrastructure to charge it.
So you fully understand the direction of this council to pursue EV purchases, you know, aggressively. I don't mind being an early adopter there.
Yeah,
absolutely. We need to make the right decisions.
Absolutely. We do understand that. Staff understands that. In fact, we've gone from having 2 EVs to, I believe it's 13 or 14 now within, you know, a year and a half. So we are pursuing it, but we also want to make sure we plan it out properly and make good choices.
And part of that, as you mentioned, is making sure we have adequate charging infrastructure. So we are being asked to approve a number of chargers, both at the Civic Center and at the Service Center.
Correct.
Given the fact that it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Evanston City operations will no longer be at this building at some point in the not-too-distant future, and I'm not saying any decisions have been made. Please don't anybody read any more into it than that. We are going to be having a discussion about what to do with this building before too long. I'm wondering how appropriate it is to invest in this particular location, since we might not, and emphasis on might, not be here for very long.
Right. So I know that's been a discussion about the future of this building for quite a long time. I don't have a magic cube that shows me what's going on in the future. All I know is that our operations are currently housed here, and the majority of the vehicles that we would be charging would be from the Civic Center because they are home-based here. The people that drive them are home-based here at the Civic Center. So right now, our intent is to make sure, because real estate's not a premium, it's at a premium here. We don't have a lot of locations that we can store extra vehicles at the service center, and then the logistics of getting folks that are home-based here at the Civic Center over to a different facility to pick up a vehicle, that's challenging. So that's why we're recommending that we move forward with installing them here. The beauty of it is that we can always dismantle these devices and we can move them to a different location should we decide to sell this property.
Right. And the devices are a portion of the cost, the installation and the running the conduit,
Right.
boring the.
Right, we're going to do
holes
direct
as part of that
boring,
as well.
to get them in place. Yeah, that all plays into the cost also.
All right. So we need them now.
Yes.
How are the current EVs being charged if we don't have?
So they're
these chargers
currently
yet?
being charged, we pull them into the fleet garage, we plug them into a conventional outlet, or we have staff charge them up at the charge point public charging stations. The issue with that is if we have city vehicles parked at the public ones, people don't have the opportunity to provide power to their personal vehicles. So we're trying to make sure that we have stations that are delegated simply for municipal use.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further comment? Seeing none, I just actually have a quick question. So one of the things that I didn't notice, we didn't get to, what is the reason for the delay in the electrification study?
So the delay in the electrification study is basically the vendor had some turnover in staffing. And in addition to that, every time they would change staffing, the information maybe it would take them a while to get back up to speed. And then in addition to that, we also just aren't confident in the way it's structured or the way it's set up. We don't think it reads very easy. We think that they have a lot of work to do on the formatting. But again, primarily, the right sizing portion, I don't think because of the turnover of staff, I don't think they've really been able to dig in and get down to the bottom of that. So the electrification portion, they're pretty good. They've got a lot of good information in there that's going to help inform our decision making.
That's
Yeah.
fine, but the turnover in staff is the concern, and now I've sparked more questions.
Okay.
Is it on this particular topic? I will know, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to be obviously sensitive about this because it's a public discussion, but I think it's worth asking if we still have confidence that they can complete the work.
So that was something that staff did discuss a little bit today. And right now we feel like they're at a point where they're almost there and we want to give them just a little more time to see if they're there. But again, if we find that we don't feel they're going to be able to complete it or to complete it to our satisfaction, then we are going to have to revisit that with them.
And we've paid them the full amount of what we owe, half,
My understanding is that we haven't paid them, we've paid them a small portion, but we haven't paid the whole thing.
Okay. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then I want to note that, as far as our actual electrification, Oslo, Norway has been a leader in this. I would encourage staff to look at their carbon budget, and in fact, they have an ordinance that requires that all municipal construction, and maybe all construction in the city, but certainly municipal construction has to be carbon neutral and all electric. And they have electric excavators and electric, anything you can imagine, that a dump truck that's electric, and they have the infrastructure to be able to charge these. And in fact, Oslo will soon be the first capital city in the world to have an all-electric public transit fleet. And so I would encourage us, and they've noted that they have to pay more for municipal construction, and they're willing to do that. And I think if we are to be leaders on this in this area, we also have to at times be willing to pay more. And so I would encourage staff to look into the possibility of importing, some of those vehicles from other countries if possible. And not to say that we certainly will do it, but just having the option and understanding what the cost may be and allowing this body to make that decision, I think, is important. And then lastly, to Councilmember Newsom's concern about EV charging at the Civic Center, I think the council member is completely on track. And I wonder if there's a possibility that these additional charging stations could actually be installed at the service center or one of our garages or somewhere else that is not potentially on the.
Right. So my understanding is that we would really need to look into and have the service center further engineered in order to provide additional charging stations there. I'm not sure that we have enough power based upon conversations with our electricians. I'm not sure we have enough power there to do any more than what we are proposing. I would have to look into that a little further.
Certainly, and our garages as well.
Yeah.
Okay. With no further questions, Councilmember Burns.
Trying to wrap my head around the ambulance. Is it true that we can request that one be built as opposed to purchasing one? And if so, what is the typical lead time?
So currently, we have a ambulance that we ordered in 2021, conventional gasoline ambulance, and it still hasn't arrived. So we're estimating about approximately a 2-year lead time. So if we were to pass up this readily available unit, it would be 2 years from whenever we get it approved to have it, brought on site.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, any abstentions? The item passes. May I have a motion on item A12? Approval of contract award to Arthur J. Gallagher and Co. for insurance broker services. This is RFQ 2535.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Burns, seconded by?
Jesse, can you second?
Seconded by Councilmember Harris. Any discussion on this item? Councilmember Newsom.
I will be recusing myself since this is my wife's employer.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing no further comment from the body, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Yes.
And any nays? The item passes. And at 5:28, we conclude this committee meeting. Thank you.